Welcome to Digital Learning, an initiative of Directorate of Collegiate Education, Government of Karnataka. Two Friends is a short story by G.T. Maupassant which is prescribed for second semester BA General English, Bengaluru North University. So in this presentation, we will be introducing ourselves to the author and the lesson Two Friends by G.T. Maupassant. I am Nandana NG, Assistant Professor of English, GFGC, Bagipalli. The contents of the session: first and foremost, learning objectives, followed by session outcomes, recapitulation of previous knowledge. This recapitulation of previous knowledge can be taken as a bridge which tries to bring the two parts together. So the student can think of himself or visualize himself as on a bridge wherein whatever previous knowledge he has, he is trying to connect it to the knowledge that he is going to gain in this session. And then we'll proceed towards the introduction to the author, followed by introduction to the lesson. We'll also discuss about the purpose of the author, followed by recapitulation, and finally multiple choice questions to assess or gauge our knowledge. The learning objectives of this session: to recapitulate previous knowledge, to acquaint or familiarize with short story as a literary genre, to develop interest for reading a short story. Introduction to the author, introduction to the lesson, to comprehend or understand the author's purpose of writing the story, to enlarge the imaginative power of the students, better develop their functional writing skills. So these are the learning objectives stated here. Let us see the session outcomes. What can a student expect, or what can be the session outcome after the course of this presentation? The student can be acquainted or familiarized with short story as a literary genre. The student can develop interest for reading a short story. An introduction to the author and background. This I personally feel is of utmost importance, because once we read a bit about the author and his background, we'll always be able to understand in which time frame the author was operating, what is he trying to say, how was the society during his times, and how is it reflected in his work. Introduction to the short story: to comprehend or understand the author's purpose of writing a short story, to enlarge the imaginative power of the students, which all in turn will improve vocabulary, word power, and fortify linguistic skills. A recap of previous knowledge. This can be considered as a brainstorming activity. A few questions are always inserted at the beginning of the text. This can be considered as an icebreaker sort of things, wherein the questions are discussion questions. The teacher and the students both can discuss about this, and the various answers that are elicited from the students can be used while teaching the story later. The first question: a person's sacrifice for the country brings him honor and dignity. Does it also bring a sense of responsibility among the countrymen? Yes, definitely yes. If a soldier has sacrificed his life for the country, then as a responsible citizen, the countrymen, they should consider it. It is their duty. A sense of responsibility is definitely there. Another person has sacrificed his life for your safe being. So definitely a sense of responsibility is there among the countrymen. It should be there. Surviving the war is important to fight it. Well, as they say, you can lose the battle, but it is important to win the war. So even if you lose for a day, you always have another day to look at. So surviving the war is important to fight it. Only if you are alive today, at the end of the day, if you are alive, tomorrow you can think of going back to the war and fighting against it. Yes, survival is very important. War is the worst enemy of humanity. Discuss. Absolutely true. When you look at human history, more or less 5,000 years of recorded history, nowhere do we have a bit of time where no war has ever taken place. In fact, throughout human history, you can see that at any point, somewhere or the other, at least one or the other countries will be in some sort of conflict or dispute. So throughout human history, any time or any time duration wherein no war is happening is actually impossible to find. But still, the thing is, war has still not taught us the lessons, or we can say we have not learnt our lessons. War is the worst enemy of humanity. A tragedy due to negligence invokes criticism rather than sympathy. Do you agree? Well, it depends on the context. Tragedy, if it is due to negligence, usually people comment that judgmental aspect is always there. But still, we have to remember it was not pre planned, it happened, it was an accident. Well, I guess before criticizing anybody or before offering your valuable judgment, we should actually try to understand what has happened before being critical. Have you ever met someone and the two of you just seem to click? Well, I guess this is something the students will completely relate to. Have you ever felt that you have met somebody and you seem to be instantly on that wavelength wherein you don't even have to say anything and the other person understands? Or maybe the two of you couldn't stop talking or didn't need to say a word, but either way you had an immediate connection. I'm sure most of you would have had it. If not, you will have it sometime later. Yes, this does happen from my personal experience. There have been times where I have met somebody and that instant wavelength wherein whatever my thoughts are, the other person seemed to have already expressed it. Yes, it does happen. Before we proceed, in the very beginning, I told you Two Friends is a short story. So let us try to first define what is a short story. A short story is a piece of prose fiction that typically can be read in one sitting and focuses on a self contained incident or series of linked incidents with the intent of evoking a single mood, effect, or mood. A novel is very long. In fact, you will have to read it for a lot of pages, or you will have to go to a more number of characters. While a short story, it is a short piece of fiction and it has a closure, clear closure. Introduction to the author. Henry Rene Albert Gay de Maupassant, born 5th August 1850 and died 6th July 1893, was a French writer remembered as a master of the short story form. Observe his timeline. The author was born before the two world wars. So does it mean the society was peaceful during his times? Of course not. He was a victim of another war that we shall see in the course of the story. Maupassant is considered one of the fathers of modern short story. He was a representative of the naturalist school of writers. This naturalist school of writers were a group of writers who tried to depict as much as naturalism as possible in their art and literature, and he was a representative of that. So his short story is a realistic, naturalistic depiction of what was happening in society. He depicted human lives and social forces in disillusioned terms. That is to say, he did not, glorify, he did not romanticize what was happening in society. What was to be seen was also seen in his work. He delighted in clever plotting. Yes, a story is dependent on a plot, and Maupassant was a master of clever plotting. The plot always was very clear, it was very strong. His stories are characterized by economy of style. Most of his stories are set during the Franco-Prussian War of the 1870s. This is what I was referring to. During the times that Maupassant was writing, the society was plagued, or France was engaged in the Franco-Prussian War during the 1870s. So most of his art or literature is set during that time. He describes the futility or helplessness or uselessness of war, and the innocent civilians who caught up in events beyond their control are permanently changed by their experiences. Yes, war changes. You might not be killed in the war, you might not be in the battle directly there, you might not be killing an enemy soldier, but still, even if you survive the war, you will be scarred for a lifetime. He wrote some 300 short stories, 6 novels, 3 travel books, and 1 volume of verse. Guy de Maupassant penned his own epitaph. Epitaph means the words written on the tomb when a person is died and dead and buried, and a stone tomb is erected. Upon it, few words are inscribed. At times, writers, they usually beforehand dictate what should be inscribed there on his own on the tombstone. Likewise, here Maupassant penned his own epitaph, and it says, "I have coveted means desired everything and taken pleasure in nothing." This is the most paradoxical epitaph you can say. He says he desired everything, But then, even when he got it, he never was happy with anything. Introduction to the lesson. The short story Two Friends exposes the dehumanizing effects of war. It is set during the siege of Paris in 1871. The main characters, Monsieur Morisot and Monsieur Sauvage, are two friends who are fond of fishing. Here we have a picture which represents that two friends fishing. It seems a very innocent picture, but picture seems innocent, but the times during which it happened were turbulent. During the war, they meet each other in Paris, and after a few drinks, they decide to go fishing again. A French colonel, gives them a password so that they can get back into the city. Happily, the two men set out fishing in the midst of the war. The two men successfully make it to the fishing spot and spend the entire day talking and fishing to their heart's content. However, all good things come to an end. They are captured by Germans who claim they are spies. The German officer demands they give him their password or he will kill them. The two men refuse to speak or refuse to divulge the password and remain loyal and courageous till the end, and they are killed by the German soldiers. They died by not putting shame upon their names, nor betraying anyone or acting like cowards, yet entering the death with dignity. Their heroism is best described in their intact humanity, undaunted fear, or will to escape. Remember, they were two ordinary people, but yet their heroism is what makes this story unique. Purpose of the author. Time and again, I have reiterated that a poet or an author for that matter always has a purpose as to why he is composing that piece of literature. What was the reason? What is he trying to say? Now let us try to see the purpose of the author here. The Two Friends short story reflects the hatred of Germans generally felt by Frenchmen. Maupassant was a Frenchman, and as a Frenchman, the hatred he had towards German is clearly depicted in the short story. He himself hated war and soldiers. His detestation means hatred of the military mentality has caused the war and their defeat. According to him, it was the military which was responsible for the devastation that was happening throughout society. This attitude towards war is expressed by the two friends, Monsieur Morisot and Monsieur Sauvage. The main characters of this story are two regular people who mostly suffered due to the war. Their problem is more than just the suffering and the hunger, as the subtraction of their dignity being outlined, as well as their right to remain free and all other little things that make life worth living. And all in all, you can say that the entire futility, the hopelessness, the emptiness, the null feel of the society is depicted here, how war literally destroys everything. So in fact, you can say that the author has used the story to clearly convey how war wreaks havoc in the life of everybody, even survivors for that matter. Let us try to recollect or recapitulate what we have learnt here. Henri René Gay de Maupassant was a French writer remembered as a master of the short story form. He was a representative of the naturalistic school of writers. He depicted human lives and social forces in disillusioned terms. He did not romanticize things here. The story is set during the siege of Paris in 1871. The story is about two friends, Monsieur Morisot and Monsieur Sauvage, who meet in Paris during the Franco-Prussian War of 1871. The war brought them nothing but sorrow, poverty and hunger, taking away of everyday pleasures of life, freedom and peace. Here, fishing is one such thing represented by as a everyday pleasure of life which the two friends miss. The Two Friends short story exposes the dehumanizing effects of war. It also describes the futility of war and the innocent civilians who are caught up in events beyond their control, and they are permanently changed by their experiences. We arrive at the multiple choice question session. Let us try to assess ourselves. Two Friends is a poem, story, essay or drama. Obviously, the answer is option B, story. Two Friends is a story. Two Friends story is written by Shakespeare, Keats, Guy de Maupassant or Jane Austen? I'm sorry here. The answer is Guy de Maupassant, option C. Guy de Maupassant was a dash writer, German, American, English or French, and the answer is option D, French. Maupassant's stories are set during the Franco-Prussian War of the 1850s, 1820s, 1870s or 1830s, and the answer is option C, 1870s. Maupassant himself hated war and soldiers. What do you think? Through the course of the introduction, what do you think his opinion towards war and soldiers was? Did he hate war and soldiers? Yes, no, maybe, none of the above. Obviously, answer is option A, yes, the author himself hated war and soldiers. References used for the presentation. Thank you.